Hang tight, kids, and keep playing those video games. Maybe one day your dreams will come true too. I couldn't think of anything else. I'm watching this movie based on a true story of this kid who was obsessed with video gaming, specifically the PlayStation game Gran Turismo, and he ends up becoming an actual race car driver. So I saw the trailer for this a couple times in the movie theater over the past few months or so, and I was like, oh, it looks okay. They said it was a true story. I'm like, what? And I'm like, it looks all right. And the trailer does it some justice. I mean, it just gives it this sort of generic feel. And tonight I went to Regal's Mystery Movie Monday. I was thinking it might be Haunting in Venice or maybe The Last Voyage of the Demeter or something, but no, it was Gran Turismo. I was slightly disappointed by that, but not overly. This is not a movie I was planning to go see myself. I do not regret the time that I spent watching it. I'm not annoyed that this was the movie. I was just a little disappointed because I was hoping for something as good and as exciting and thrilling as Talk to Me was, which was the last one I went to. Anyway, the movie in itself is a solid storytelling event. As I said, it's based on the true story of this kid named Jann Mardenborough or something like that. And he was good at gaming. He stumbled across this opportunity to participate in this race, this online racing thing, so that he could then go to this academy to learn how to become an actual race car driver. And I was watching this little tiny interview with him, sort of behind the scenes thing, where the guy who plays him, sorry, I meant to start the slideshow. Jeez. Where this guy who plays him, that guy, was talking with him about the story, or just talking about the story or something. And the real kid, I call him kid, he's not a kid, he's a full-fledged adult, but he was saying how that, or somebody was saying how that he was 19 when he entered this tournament. He had no driving experience. I think that was what they had indicated. And then 8 months later, he's driving a freaking race car. So it's just crazy. His story in itself is crazy in a cool way, though some stuff in here was fictionalized. And I'll get around to that, I think, a little bit later, maybe sort of in the con territory, though, you know, they fictionalize stuff all the time in stories that are based on true events. A recent example is Sound of Freedom. There were some things in there that were fictionalized. The story in general, as a whole, was very much true, but there were portions of it that were based on other events and didn't occur in the way or even in the manner that was portrayed in the movie. It doesn't take away from the message, just like the fictional stuff in here doesn't take away from the overall true story of this guy. It's quite interesting and exciting. I'm not into racing. I'm not into video gaming I do play some, but I'm just not into it very much. I would imagine that fans of racing and or video games would enjoy this film quite a bit. So another interesting fact about this movie is that the real Jann did his own stunt driving. He did his own driving for this movie. So that was super cool. I mean, how exciting, honestly, must it be for this kid, this guy, to be just living his life playing video games, and then he becomes this race car driver he's done fairly well. I mean, he's not like super best ever all the time. He has had some wins, he's had some losses, he's had some did not finish events, but he's done decently. I mean, he's done better than most people in the world would do in that sort of situation. So it's really cool. His story is cool. And they talk a little bit about the game Gran Turismo. They talk about how it's the most accurate racing simulator out there, which is really interesting. That's how he basically learned to do what he did. He had to learn how to physically drive, but all this muscle memory from the times that he spent playing the game obsessively came into play as he was learning how to drive these race cars. They had to go through all this training. There were multiple people that were in on the training, but anyway, they had to go through this training and they had to get their body conditioned because it is a very physically intensive sport. and it's rough on the body. It takes a lot of endurance. And so it's not just the skill of driving, there's also the mental ability that you have to have and the physical endurance you have to have. They even show the Le Mans race, which I didn't realize this. Now, I've heard of Le Mans, but I didn't realize that race is 24 hours long. Holy cow. Now, one driver doesn't drive 24 hours, they switch off, but that's exhausting. I just can't even imagine. Some other stuff that I liked about this was, I liked how when it would show him driving, doing his driving and the training and the racing and stuff, it would sometimes it would do this cool thing, and there's a picture or two of that in here, what I'm trying to explain. It would like explode out the car and just show you like he's back in his room racing, kind of like where his mindset was going back to that time when he would just race in this game. Sometimes he'd have to play these mental games with himself to be able to do what he had to do. So I thought that was really cool. The cinematography of the races was really cool. The way they would show shifting gears and braking, and it would show close-ups of like the brakes or stuff. It was done well. It was shot well. I don't really have any issues at all with editing and the flow and cinematography, and the acting was fine. Everybody did a great job. This guy who played the main character, I'd never seen him before, but I thought he did fine. There were some emotional scenes that happened because there was a tragedy that occurred. That right there, that's an example of what I'm talking about. There was a tragedy that occurred in one of his races. That was true. And there's a scene afterwards, and he's dealing with the emotional fallout from that. And he did a really good job of portraying his character's angst in that particular situation. Totally understandable. And he did a convincing job. I was initially planning to just do a short video about this movie, like maybe in the car, outside of the movie theater, or on my way home, recording a short video. But what changed my mind was about the end of the second act, heading into the third act. All of a sudden, when it's showing this thing that I was telling you about just a few seconds ago, that gave this movie a little bit more weight for me when that particular thing happened. And it's not like, I'm not like super in love with this film like I was, let's say, Top Gun Maverick or whatever. That's not a true story. Or like I was with Sound of Freedom, which was an excellent movie. That movie hit me much, much harder than this movie did. But this movie still does a really good job of showing this story of this kid. And it also shows he's kind of at odds with his father, because his father wants him to be realistic about his life. Let's face it, despite my intro, most kids are not going to be able to achieve this sort of thing despite their love for video games. That's something that, like, and when I say video games, like, let's say, there's kids that participate in tournaments and they win all these. I say kids, anybody that's younger than me as a kid, y'all. Gamers who participate in tournaments and become rich and they win all these trophies, whatever, you know what I mean? That's so rare that happens for most people. So they were showing he's at odds with his dad. His dad is like, basically, you need to get a real job, that sort of thing. You need to stop lazing around and just playing these games. And that is a perception that a lot of parents have about kids playing video games. And yes, they can become an obsession. That's true. And they can sap the productivity out of some people if they don't keep a handle on that, because all you want to do is just play a game. And so I certainly got his father's point of view, and they don't necessarily present him as being super assholey about it, but you do get the sense that, as the audience member, you're supposed to be on his side, his dreams, and what he wants to do. And I was, but at the same time, I completely identified with what his father was trying to say to him. And so they showed this as this conflict between son and father. I think that part was one of the things that was dramatized, fictionalized a bit, because when I've read stuff about him, and his parents in general, I didn't get the impression that there was that same sort of friction between them in real life. I might be wrong. Maybe I just haven't read enough sources. I did a very quick sort of research type thing when I got home to find out, what's true, what wasn't, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I liked how they did present that sort of absolutely realistic reaction that most parents would have to a kid wanting to do something like that. And his mother was supportive and everything. She didn't really necessarily take the type of stand against what he wanted to do like his father did, but she kind of was presented as the completely supportive parent. No matter what, she was going to support her child all the way through, that sort of thing. Anyway, I thought they did a good job with that, even though, like I said, I could completely identify with the father's point of view. The father was played by Jimon Hansu. I finally got his name right. I had to write it down. I always want to call him Digimon, and I know that's not his name. And his mother was played by, I saw her name on the screen. I'm like, is that who I think it is? Yeah, his mother was played by Ginger Spice, of all people. I didn't realize she was an actor. Anyway, okay. So what else? Something else that I wanted to, something else I wrote down in the pro category was that there was quite a bit of cheering and clapping when we were watching the movie. Maybe part of that was just the excitement of being able to see a movie a couple weeks before it's due to come out, because I think its release date is August 11th. Or maybe some of that was just because that was the type of feeling that the movie was trying to generate. You know, there'd be a triumph and you want to clap, that sort of thing. So the audience that watched it seemed pretty engaged with it. I think most people, even if you're not a racing fan, even if you're not a video game fan, I think most people will enjoy this. It's a pretty solid film. It's solidly told. It's inspirational. It's exciting. It feels kind of, just your typical generic type of underdog enters a world that he's completely unfamiliar with. It's very much follows that pattern. David Harbour does a really good job in his role. I think his character is a fictional character. The character played by Orlando Bloom was a real character, but they changed his name in the movie because the real dude who thought this up and kind of was sort of the spearhead behind this whole idea, he had a completely different name. Anyway, so yeah, those are pretty much all of the positives that I had written down. Cons, not many, honestly, not many. Some were that, okay, some of the race results were fictionalized. I found this out as I looked it up. And sorry, my daughter keeps messaging me. And that's not, maybe it's not fair to call that a con because things are fictionalized a lot of times in movies or series shows that are based on real life events. But I was a bit disappointed to find out about some of those. However, some things, some really big deal things were definitely not fictionalized. The overall story is true. The tragedy thing that I mentioned, that's true. The girlfriend aspect. I went digging to see if I could find out if this chick was real, and I don't see anything about this guy's life that indicates that she was. So I don't know if she is or not. If she's not, I feel like her role was completely unnecessary. I felt like they just put her in for the romantic side of his character, which we didn't need. So what was the point of her? I could have totally done without her. I mean, she didn't necessarily, like, the story of him and her, it didn't necessarily mess anything up, but it just felt like, what's the point of this? Like, why? What does this have to do with the main storyline of him becoming this racer? So I felt like she really wasn't needed, unless she's totally true, in which case, yes, absolutely, her character would be important to show in here, but I'm kind of wondering about her. Anyway, whatever, might be wrong. Then there was another thing that I wrote down as a con, and it's not even a con about the movie itself. It's just a con about some reasoning that the main character had. There's this scene, it's not super spoilery, but he indicated to his father, I did this for you, like the racing and stuff, because his father had been a soccer player when he was younger. That part is true as well. And he said, I did this for you, like the racing. I did this for you because I'm proud of you. No, you didn't do it for your father. You did it for yourself. And that's fine. And that's cool that you're proud of your father, but you didn't jump into this racing world to do it for your dad. So as soon as that line was said, I'm like, no, I'm not buying that line. Don't put sappy things in there that don't ring true. So for me, that's why it ended up kind of in the con category. But that's I guess a writing issue. I don't know. Maybe he really did say something like that in real life. Maybe he really did for his father. I don't feel like that was the case, but it just stood out to me. Another thing that could be perceived as a con, but I guess not really. It's just more like it's cliche, it's formulaic. They have to have these antagonistic relationships with their competitors, that sort of thing. And I know that race car drivers can be very competitive and antagonistic towards each other, but I'm just wondering how much that was really a thing. So you know, not necessarily a con about the movie, really. I'm reaching. I'm reaching. I'm trying to be balanced with my review here, pros and cons. In general, this film is fine. I didn't consider it a waste of my time, like I said. I don't think most people who watch this will utterly hate it. It's pretty solid. There's no agenda-driven crap in here. There's no woke nonsense in here. It's just telling this story, this really cool, interesting story about this kid who was able to live his dream. And it was nicely done. And I don't think I have anything else to say about it. So I'm going to wrap it up because it's getting late. All right, you guys. Later.